And welcome back to our discussion on positivity bias. We're on chapter 18, and the topic is disability or differently abled. And this is a fascinating study if you think back into the timing in history, the times that we've lived through. Back in the 70s, there was a heated debate amongst the public health professionals and politicians regarding the housing and the handling of children and adults that had been diagnosed with mental disabilities. So if you remember, even in my grandpa's time, any children were to be seen and not heard, right? But how much more so anyone with disabilities, or mental disabilities or handicaps, they were kind of hidden away from society. They were institutionalized. My father had a sister who had a childhood disease that left her mentally incapacitated. And she eventually was institutionalized for the bulk of her life. And we believe that her death was due to negligence in the institution. But that was something that was common in the 70s. And so one of the discussions that was going on amongst the politicians and everyone else was the potential of moving them towards being back in the community under neighborhood care or family care or group homes that we've seen since then. And the idea was to transition this into something like that. But back in the 70s, this was a new concept, and it was politically charged. It was very politically charged. And so at that time, there was Robert Wilkes, was the director of Child Development Center at the Coney Island Hospital. And so he wrote to the DEBA asking the Jewish perspective on retarded individuals. And that was the term that was used back then, was retarded individuals, whether from birth or whatever, whether slow thinking.
Called mentally disabled, but yes.
Right. So the question then became, what is the Jewish perspective on this? And they got into a dialogue and they wrote back and forth a number of times. And as we expect from everything we've learned from the DEBA's response was brand new and totally positive, and totally revolutionary, really, at that time in the 70s and well into the 80s as well. And an excerpt from one of the DEBA's responses was, with regard to, quote, Jewish retarded, parenthetically, I prefer some terms such as special people, not simply as a euphemism, but because it would be more accurately reflect their situation, especially in view of the fact that in many cases, the retardation is limited to the capacity to absorb and assimilate knowledge, while in other areas, they may be quite normal or even above average. So this idea, nowadays we talk about special needs, special education, that's the common terminology. But what Robert Wilkes is saying is, to his knowledge, that term special was a term coined by the DEBA. Seeing the specialness, the uniqueness, the gift within what we're looking at as a negative. And in a sense, the DEBA is turning this whole idea on the other side, right? We talk about disability as a lacking, something's missing, right? The DEBA is saying that a perceived lack in one capacity suggests a higher capacity in another area. So if someone is, lacking mental acuity or social sensitivity, they might have a heightened spirituality or a heightened imaginative capacity. So flipping it on in, it's not about a disability, it's about a unique ability or a specialness. And this leads to this whole concept that about defining our personal strengths. There's a number of books that have been written in the last 15 years about a strengths revolution, focusing on what are people really good at, and they're doing business assessments not based on necessary skills, but rather personalities and personalities traits, and where are your strengths? What are you strongest at? And rather than trying to fix the deficits, just get you to do more of the positive. Do more of what you do good and delegate the rest, kind of thing. And that's a business sense, but again, it comes back to this idea of don't focus on the negative or the disabilities. Focus on the abilities and the strengths and what could be done with that, and focusing more on the positive things. So the Rebbe writes also, I am quite convinced that if a proper system of aptitude tests were instituted to determine the particular skills of special children at an early age, and if appropriate classes were then established to enable them to develop these skills, their unique skills, the result would be enormously gratifying, if not astounding. Now, needless to say, such an educational method would greatly enhance their self-confidence and general development, not to mention also the fact that it would enable them to make an important contribution to society. Make an important contribution to society. The Rebbe is suggesting that there's something they have to contribute that we don't have access to without them. And even the whole concept, I'm a diversity officer right now in the Great Lakes region. And part of what we talk about is, I quote General Goldfein all the time when he talks about a brain trust. A brain trust is when you surround yourself with people who are so vastly different from you that they know what you don't even know to think about. You don't know what you don't know, but you surround yourself with people who might, and they get to add you.
Collective intelligence has always been better than individual intelligence. And it's interesting that the Israeli army, not the US Army, but the Israeli army, finds places for the developmentally disabled to serve.
One of the most interesting aspects of that is there are balloon cameras on a lot of the border areas, so that the borders are always under surveillance, especially because of these tunnels, these attack tunnels that had been built and created and these things. So monitoring a camera that's focused on the same space 24/7, most of us are not going to be able to do that. We would be bored out of our
buddy.
We would be so bored, right? But there's a space on the autistic spectrum where individuals are capable of maintaining their intention, their focus on the same screen for hours at a time and stay focused. And when something changes, boy, do they get excited and let you know. And Israel is using that special ability for security purposes.
That's good.
And I think this is what the Rebbe was seeing, back in the 70s, is that if we focus on the abilities and heighten those and work with those, they're so much more capable.
Well, just like you say, where they may be disabled in one aspect, they may be a genius in another.
Yeah. And society is in need of that abilities. We need to help train those and adapt those skills to be able to really make use of them for, again, the brain trust, the collective intelligence, right? The other story this chapter brings out, which I've always had a soft spot for, back in 1976, Joseph Kabilev, he joined a group of disabled soldiers on their IDF-sponsored trip to America. While they were here in New York, so one of the Rebbe's messengers went over and invited them for a private audience with the Rebbe, the whole group. At that time, most of these soldiers had been viewed in a negative light as constant need of attention, no longer useful, no longer capable. And that only adds, obviously, insult to injury, right? You know, here you are a national hero because of your service, and yet you're written off. And that's a terrible, terrible thing. So this Joseph talks about coming in for this, you know, this meeting with the Rebbe. I don't know, there's like 25 or 30, you know, disabled veterans at that time coming in to meet with the Rebbe. And Joseph writes, from that terrible day on which I woke without my legs, I've seen all sorts of things in the eyes of those who look at me. Pain, pity, revulsion, anger. But meeting with the Rebbe was the first time in all those years I encountered true empathy. When the Rebbe spoke with these folks, he said, first of all, he apologized. I think this was kind of funny, but the Rebbe apologized for his Ashkenazi Hebrew. Because all of these, you know, it's the Israeli Hebrew, right? Anyway, the Rebbe spoke and he said, if a person has been deprived of a limb or a faculty, this itself indicates that God has given him or her special powers to overcome the limitations that this entails and to surpass the achievements of ordinary people. The Rebbe added emphatically, you are not disabled or handicapped. You are special and unique, and you have a potential the rest of us do not possess. We all know the idea that God does not give a person a challenge he can't handle. So obviously he can handle it. So therefore, if you're in this circumstance, the Torah clearly states that God has given you special, unique abilities, not only to overcome the challenge, but to be somehow productive in society in a way that others couldn't. You have a special, unique ability. And he even gives a Torah source for this. Yaakov Avinu, when he wrestled with the Malach of Esav, he walked away with an injury. But he walked away also with a new name and a new mission.
Well, that's interesting. Yes, he did. Yeah.
So the Rebbe is making that comparison that every wounded soldier is coming away with an injury, but is also coming away with a new assignment, a new mission that's different from all the rest of us and one that only they can achieve. Fascinating, fascinating insight. The Rebbe even went so far as to say that you should no longer be called Nechei Yisrael, the disabled of Israel, but Mitziyamne Yisrael, the exceptional of Israel.
That's that positivity spin.
Positivity spin, but basing this on Torah, right? So it's God wouldn't give you something you can't handle. So certainly you can handle this, but not only that, your unique mission, whatever that is, you have special kaiches that the rest of us don't have because we haven't been given the challenge you've been given. And those challenges could be moral challenges, those could be, you know, personality challenges, but here these could also be physical challenges. But the bottom line, we are more powerful than we even realize. We are capable in ways that we haven't even thought of. And we exist because we have a mission. We're here for a reason. If we're alive, we have a mission, we have something we have to accomplish, and we are uniquely gifted with whatever is required to accomplish that mission. I think that, you know, we were talking previously a little bit about the suicide rates and things, and especially amongst veterans. I think this is a key point. If we would all realize that we have a mission, we exist for a purpose, we have all of the abilities to accomplish whatever it is that we're supposed to accomplish. No excuses, get on with the task.
Yeah, I can't always put myself into the shoes of those who are depressed. Uh, there's medicines that help that.
Right. And I think we also want to distinguish, at a certain level, we have to distinguish between sadness and depression versus a clinical illness, a clinical depression. And I think there's a major difference between the two. But
Oh,
nevertheless,
we all know how to, we all have sorrow here and there, grief. When people we love pass away, that's a pet. But there's those every day that they have clinical depression, and that's what I'm talking about. That's where you, I think we see these suicides because we don't recognize it always. They're not getting their help.
right. And we need to make sure that they get the help, but also realize that it is a Rahmanis. It's a merciful situation that they may be in, but they're here for a reason, as a purpose. They're here for, and it's something that they have a challenge more than I do. I need to help them with their challenge, but there's something they have to accomplish that they're here to accomplish. And
Well, and we put it different ways, you and me, but it's the same. You think we're here to usher in the Mashiach, and I say we're here to make this world better, which would in turn usher in the Mashiach. But
either way, which
either
comes
way,
first, the chicken or the egg? The result is
yeah,
the same.
basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, and someone who's suffering from depression, and certainly even clinical depression, there's a purpose for their existence, and there's something they have to accomplish here, and we have to be able to support them in whatever it is that they have to
Remind them
accomplish.
that they have a mission.
Well, and they may need more than just that reminder. They need additional support to do that.
Yes.
But we also have to acknowledge that they have a unique ability that we don't have, and that whatever it is that they're supposed to contribute, I can't do that for them.
It's funny, reading this last part of this chapter, I remember running into a guy who had become disabled in the U.S. Army at the Friends of the IDF dinner. There was he was there with several other disabled IDF soldiers who were representing the IDF at the Friends of the IDF. But this particular U.S. Soldier ended up running for representative, and he is a representative now in the Congress. So he is, he makes the most of his life. He's going forward.
It's a tremendous thing, and I think that a lot of the challenges the world faces would be better off.
Or for that matter, our senator in Illinois. And I mean, she may not be Jewish, but she's definitely she's learned to overcome her disablement from the helicopter crash.
So
I mean,
that's it.
whether I agree with her politics or not, I have to admire her drive.
Absolutely.
And she's now
We
a
can
mother.
learn from that. We can learn from that.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. I hope to see you Sunday.